They see a successful doctor now, but they don't know the price his mother paid. She begged on her knees, her voice breaking with every sob. "Please," she cried, "he is all I have." But the old doctor's heart was as cold as stone. "No money, no medicine," he muttered, turning his back on a mother's agony. She didn't have gold, and her hair was already short from years of toil. All she had left was the sacred wrapper inherited from her mother, her only connection to her past. In the dusty market, she held the fabric tight one last time before trading her memories for her son's life. Her hands trembled as she clutched the cold coins, the price of her mother's memory. She didn't look back at the merchant, folding her precious wrapper. She turned and ran toward the apothecary, her heart drumming against her ribs. "1 bottle," she gasped, throwing the money onto the counter. "Give it to me, now." She didn't feel the thorns scratching her legs or the stones cutting her feet. Every breath was a prayer. "Stay with me, my son," she whispered into the wind. The medicine vial was pressed against her chest, the only thing keeping her world from falling apart. The hut was deathly silent. She knelt by his side, her hands shaking as she uncorked the vial. "Drink, my love," she whispered, lifting his head. As the first drop touched his lips, she held her breath, watching his pale face for any sign of life. She had nothing left to give but her prayers. Minutes felt like hours as she watched him. Then, a small miracle, his eyelids fluttered. He looked up, his eyes focusing on her tired, tear-stained face. He didn't see the missing wrapper or the dust on her skin. He only saw his mother. He was coming back. She lost her inheritance, her pride, and her strength, but she saved her world. A mother's love isn't measured by what she has, but by what she is willing to lose. Years passed, and the memory of that fever faded, but the lesson remained. The boy who was saved by a mother's sacrifice grew up with a purpose. He didn't just survive. He became the hope his mother prayed for. The medicine saved his life, but his mother's sweat paved his future. For 20 years, she became the first to arrive at the farms and the last to leave the market. She carried heavy loads on her head until her neck stiffened, and washed mountains of clothes until her palms were raw to pay for the books she could not read herself. While other children played, she was in the fields before the sun rose. She took on the jobs men refused, hoeing the hot earth and harvesting under the scorching heat. Every bag of grain she sold wasn't for food, it was for his tuition. She was planting seeds in the soil so her son could grow roots in the classroom. The village slept, but their hut stayed awake. While his mother's body ached from the day's farming, she refused to let the lamp go out. She bought kerosene instead of meat so he could see his books. Through secondary school, he wore the same worn-out uniform for years, but his grades were the brightest in the land. He knew every page he turned was paid for by a mother's sweat. He watched her hands grow thinner as his dreams grew bigger. Every school fee was a battle won. Every exam passed was a victory for them both. He wasn't just studying for a career. He was studying to rescue the woman who had already rescued him 1,000 times.
He was a man now, tall enough to see the gray in his mother's hair and the way she favored her hip when she walked back from the farm. His uniform was tight and faded, a testament to years of use, but he wore it like armor. Every morning he promised her, "One day, Mama, you will never have to touch a hoe again." He carried his books like they were the keys to her freedom.
The son, now a tall teenager in a neat but worn secondary school uniform, is walking on a dusty road. He is carrying a stack of books or a worn-out backpack. In the background, His mother is standing by the farm gate, waving him off, her hand resting on her back as if in pain from the morning's work. Then came the day the postman brought a letter that changed everything. The University of Medicine. His mother didn't need to read the words to know what they meant. She fell to her knees, not from exhaustion this time, but from a joy so heavy it broke her. All those years of farming, all those sold wrappers, it was all worth it. The postman's arrival was the moment they had spent a lifetime waiting for. As she held the envelope, her hands thick with the scars of the farm trembled. She couldn't read the sophisticated English, but she saw the university seal. She sank to the earth, her knees hitting the dust of the farm, crying out in a mix of pain and triumph. The sacrifice had been accepted. The university campus was a world away from the dusty paths of the village. To others, it was just a school. To him, it was holy ground. He walked those halls with the weight of his mother's dreams on his shoulders. Every lecture he attended was a harvest she had paid for in sweat. He was a farm boy among elites, but he carried a strength they could never understand, the strength of a mother's promise. The names were called one by one, but when they reached his, the world seemed to go silent. He didn't walk to the stage for himself. He walked for the woman in the back row with the rough hands and the faded wrapper. As they draped the doctor's hood around his neck, he didn't look at the cameras or the crowd. He looked at her. He walked down from the stage, bypassed the dignitaries, and knelt at her feet in front of everyone. He took off his new, white doctor's coat and placed it over her tired shoulders.
"Mama," he whispered, his voice shaking, "this coat is yours. You tilled the soil so I could heal the world. You are the real doctor. I am just your hands." The farm was a memory, but her love was his legacy.
When she returned from the city, she wasn't just the widow with the sick son anymore. She walked into the village with her head held high, carrying the framed photo of her son in his doctor's gown. The same neighbors who used to whisper that she was wasting her life on a weak child were now the first to bring her gifts, hoping for a mention to the new doctor. The mockery had turned into music. Every mother in the village now told their children, "Be like the doctor." Elara just smiled. She knew their hearts hadn't changed, but her son had changed her story. She was no longer the woman who sold her wrappers. She was the mother of the man who saves lives. The same tongues that once sharpened like knives to mock her were now heavy with envy. They watched from the shadows of their huts, whispering about the woman they used to pity. "Look at her now," they muttered, "the one we called a fool for selling her wrappers." Today, her son is the king of the city. The silence of the afternoon was shattered by a sound the village rarely heard, the deep, smooth hum of a luxury engine. A sleek, black car cut through the dust like a shadow. As it pulled up right in front of the widow's humble door, the village stood still. The whisperers stopped their talking. The elders stopped their walking. 30 years ago, she sold her only wrapper to buy his medicine. 30 years of farming under the hot sun, 30 years of wearing the same torn shoes so he could have books. People said she was foolish. They said her son would forget her. But a mother's love is a seed that takes time to grow into a forest. The luxury car stops in front of a massive, modern white mansion with gold accents and a beautiful garden. The son is helping his mother out of the car. She looks at the house larger than anything she ever imagined and then looks at her son with tears of joy. She realizes this is now her home. After 30 years of walking the dusty paths of this village, her feet were finally going to rest. The doctor didn't just point to the car. He took her hand with the reverence of a servant to a queen as he opened the heavy door. The scent of expensive leather filled the air, a scent of a world she had never known. The son is bent slightly at the waist, holding the door wide open with one hand and gently guiding his mother into the plush passenger seat with the other. The mother looks hesitant, almost afraid to touch something so beautiful, but her son's smile gives her courage. In the background, the crowd of villagers is leaning forward, trying to catch a glimpse of the luxury inside. The villagers watched in a daze. They realized then that the foolish widow had actually been the wisest among them. She hadn't been losing her life. She had been investing it. The engine roared, leaving the village in a cloud of red dust, but they weren't heading to his house yet. The doctor had one mission: to replace every torn wrapper and every worn-out shoe his mother had ever used to keep him alive. It was time for the world to see her as the queen she always was. The scene shifts from the dusty village to a glittering, high-end fashion boutique in the city. The mother is standing in front of a giant, gold-framed mihor. Attendants are holding up expensive, colorful silk laces and designer handbags. Her son is standing behind her, smiling, telling her to pick everything she likes. She looks at her reflection, hardly recognizing the elegant woman looking back. She thought the car and the clothes were the biggest surprises of her life. She was wrong. As they walked out of the store, a phone call changed everything.